Well, I was reading about you a little bit and I saw that you have a tech background and a journalism background. Can you share a little bit about your background before we get into all the stuff that you're doing now? I'm just curious.
Sure. So I think actually my background is what made me uniquely approach Made Safe the way I did. I have a master's in journalism and ironically never wanted to write about, sunscreen and cosmetics and thought that that was just less weighty of a subject. And so I find it incredibly ironic that here I am and we talk a lot about personal care and sunscreen and all kinds of things you put on your skin, those very things. But yet we do it in a way that is looking at the chemistries and what's going into them so that people can know if what they're using is safe, right? So being a journalist has served me incredibly well to approach Made Safe and think about the wider context of how are we using something? Why are we using it? What do these chemistries do? What do we need to know and understand about them? All of these kinds of practical skills that a journalist has served me really well. It's also something that very much I went from being a journalist into the tech universe. And what I always worked on was high quality content in a community, and often there was commerce associated with that. So those three things were the world in which I came from when I started Made Safe. And what we as a nonprofit have left off is the commerce piece, but we impact the marketplace very much through our seal and what we do and talking about chemicals. And so, what we've created is a community for people to come to and find products that are made safe certified. They are made with safe ingredients. They don't contain harmful chemicals that are, often thought of as carcinogenic or high risk pesticides, flame retardants, also all of the endocrine disrupting impacts. We look at behavioral toxins and teratogens. Those are things that impact a growing fetus. We looked at reproductive toxins, developmental toxins, neurotoxins, and all of those things are really important to our healthy well-being and the way we live. So
Yeah.
those chemicals are really important. They're again, the endocrine disrupting chemicals. And we talk about, all of those. But look, this causes a lot of homework for people to have to do individually. I start
Yeah.
talking about chemicals and they go like, oh, whoa. And so,
Right. Right.
that
It's
ties into the journalist in me wanted to, understand the chemicals and the chemistries. But the tech side of me was like, whoa, this is so vast. It's huge. I have to create a database. So long before there was Made Safe, I was creating the early days of our database, how to keep track of all these chemicals and think about it. And so while the idea was sort of evolving into what now we talk about as Made Safe, I was, going around collecting this information, thinking about how to warehouse it because I had this tech background. So again, these things came together, my journalism, my tech background, my work in creating high quality content commerce communities to create the platform that is now, madesafe.org.
so amazing. I mean, I appreciate what you're doing. And so many things from what you just said. And I feel like we are so similar in so many ways. I started researching chemicals when I was pregnant with my twins. I think you have twins too.
I do.
And just sort of putting all this information together because people can't make sense of it. It was so difficult for me to make sense of it. And like you said, there just needs to be a place for the community to get the information and use it to make changes. And I actually had Yana Blankenship on my podcast. I
Oh my
love
gosh, it's
Captain
amazing.
Blankenship. And she was telling me like how rigorous the process was to get her products Made Safe certified. She is so proud that her products bear the Made Safe seal. Other products that I've used over the years, it's been about 10 years since I've been on this streak of really trying to use safe products. Branch Basics is one that I love. And so these brands that I really respect have products that are Made Safe certified. I really wanted to know more about it. And it seems like you guys do such a thorough job of vetting these products. And so really, it's just so interesting to hear you talk. So I also, how did you make the leap? Was like, there's something personal that happened where you left journalism and like, okay, I'm going to focus on healthy living education?
Yeah, I think journalism is the lens through which I kind of approach everything. In journalism, you have to master something you don't necessarily know pretty quickly in order to share it with your following for, a broad sort of sense of the term. And so that was what I brought into tech. And I was always on the side of the house that was talking to the customers as opposed to building the actual UI technology. But there's a place in which those things kind of come together. And, that was what I was doing when I was living in California and I had my twins and I brought them home from the hospital and they were allergic to things I didn't know it was possible to be allergic to, which kind of blew my mind. I had an older daughter, a singleton, as they say. And
Yes.
so I'd
You
had
had the
my
bliss of a singleton.
yeah,
Yes.
so I knew I had this frame of reference. She didn't look like what my twins looked like in terms of behaviors, and she wasn't breaking out in angry red rashes when I was changing her diaper, and she wasn't throwing up every time I would feed her. And so I knew that the allergies and the actions that were happening with my twins didn't have to be the norm. And the doctors, would say use a steroid cream or something. I didn't want to do that to my infants days old because of these angry red rashes and kind of almost blistering they were having. And they, it turns out were just very allergic to common things in everyday products. And even though I was a self-declared greenie and, considered myself a pretty devoted egoista, buying a lot of things for my babes at Whole Foods, I was still using things that could be allergenic. And I wanted to stop that. And so I started, the journalist in me started doing all of this research. What is going on? What's happening with my kids? So I 100% agree with you, Andrea. This stuff is personal. That's how most people come to it and have kind of a wake up call about like what is going on with the things we use. And so I started looking into it and realizing, wow, there's, over 80,000 chemicals that we know of in use today in the kinds of things that we bring into our homes. These chemicals and chemistries are largely invisible. We don't really recognize that they're there. Sometimes they're ingredients on a label, and sometimes they are forming in product. Sometimes they get left off the label for trade secret reasons or otherwise. Sometimes there's no label. So
Yeah.
if you truly want
Right.
to know what's in your product, you're going to have to get pretty serious about looking. And what I found over time is when I was first doing this, I was just approaching it, reporting on what I saw on the label. And you can get far, but only so far by doing that. We had to go deeper. And so it made safe. Everything we do is under NDA, both with the brand, with their manufacturers and raw suppliers when necessary. So we are seeing very deep into products, going beyond what's on the label and creating change in the system, as I'm sure both Yana and the Branch Basics folks talk about, really getting our hands dirty and helping them see more deeply into the process of how things are being made. And the brands that are working with Made Safe love that, want to do that. And we are pushing the supply chain to get better for everybody.
Even though you were shopping at Whole Foods, and I think there's this misconception that if you're shopping, if you see the clean label, a clean branding or non-toxic, you think you're doing all the right things. And unfortunately, that's just not the case. And I think it's amazing that you go so deep and I guess in some cases protect the company by keeping NDA in place. So maybe they don't want to share this information with the public. Is that what that
Well, we
means?
push transparency and we do have 100% transparency requirement at Made Safe. But here's the
Okay.
thing, what is required to be put on the label is not actually what I would call true transparency. But I understand that a label is only so big and so long, and there's only so much space. And there are certain practices that are commonplace in terms of what you do and don't put on there. So labels can lie without even meaning to. The way I help explain this to people is if you have a cookie and you buy this pre-made cookie, you will see that it has, flour, eggs, whatever. And you get to the chocolate chips, and in parentheses, it says the ingredients within the chocolate chip, like the cocoa powder and maybe there's a like lecithin and I don't know, sugar and whatever else is in that chocolate chip, depending on what it is and how it was made. And you'll see if maybe there's a preservative in there that otherwise doesn't necessarily have to get listed on the label unless you're seeing that level of detail. So it's helpful for people to think, well, when you see, for example, on a personal care label, an ingredient, most don't have those parenthetical explanations of what else is in that thing. And one of the things that we see at Made Safe is we're accounting for 100% of every ingredient to see what's in there. And when we start looking, what we're first looking for is something on our banned list. The banned list of prohibited ingredients, those are things we do not permit at Made Safe, is 6,500 large. That is not where we end. That is where we begin. Let me say that again. That is not where we end. That is where we begin. That is nearly 4 times the size of the EU restricted list by volume. That is massively larger than the about 14 things that are restricted in the US. People are always shocked about that. Not even asbestos is fully eradicated in the US. It is still
Wild. I mean, every time it comes up in a product, I just can't believe that brands are using talc with the asbestos issue. It seems like it should be long gone. And the unfortunate truth is it's just not.
Exactly. And so there are all kinds of things like that. Like you don't know unless you're following this
Yes,
that talc,
exactly.
you're like, talc? Look, talc is mined, and it's mined in very similar places to where asbestos comes from. And the shape at a molecular level, they look very, very similar. So there's contamination in a lot of talc unless it's being looked for. So that would be, we've been asked, do you allow talc? And we say no, because you know what? Too much opportunity for contamination with carcinogenic material, and
Yeah.
you could use something like cornstarch. Like,
Yeah,
let's
just why the risk?
easy.
It's
Why?
totally replaceable. It doesn't make any sense. And another thing that's interesting about the labels is with cleaning products, I don't think people understand those particularly leave things off. Sometimes I'll look at a cleaning product and it'll just say preservative or surfactant. That's
Right.
not an actual ingredient. That's just the function. And
Exactly.
the information is just not there, unfortunately.
Not there, and we need to do much more in terms of educating people, but not everybody wants to do this. As you know, right? That's
Yep.
why you do the work you do. You're
Yeah.
helping deconstruct things for people so they can figure it out. That's what we're doing, and we just need a lot more of that because if you're a busy mom and you're trying to like get your kids out the door and be on time for things and show up and just keep your family afloat, it's really hard to take on also knowing the things that are in every single product. And so that's where having resources, having help is so useful so that you don't have to be the expert in this. And that was
Absolutely. I
the
appreciate
premise.
so much what you're offering. I just think there can't be enough of this because like you said, as a busy mom, you can't do it all. I mean, I
Oh,
feel like, and it's never ending too. So it's not something that you could just learn and then put to the side
right.
because
Well, and it's different for every product, right? And what you're looking for changes and all of those things. So,
right.
at Made Safe Beyond our banned list, what we start to do is we ask questions about how an ingredient or what's been done to it, how's that going to behave in the human body? Is it toxic for humans? Most of those aren't getting put in your average product, but you'd be surprised at how many, preservatives or active ingredients can be associated to some harm. And at a certain level, it's tolerated in most products because like that amount won't kill you. But that's not what we ask at Made Safe. We say, well, if this ingredient is associated with a risk, we don't want to see it. We don't want to see it in commerce. We don't want to see it as become proliferated into a high production volume chemical. We want to keep that down. So we want to keep the pressure on those chemicals and chemistries and get them out of products and see them eradicated as opposed to, used more. And so
Right.
it's really a very different philosophy than most, is that we say, if there's a hazard, we're going to say no, exercise the precautionary principle, which means we're going to be cautious. Look, our term is made with safe ingredients. So we have to ensure that they're safe, not just for humans. We don't just look at that, but we actually go down and look at measurements for how something behaves in air, in water, in soil, and in sediment, because we're trying to see if something's going to, last forever in our environment. That would be problematic in terms of chemicals and chemistries too. We don't want those things that are going to stick around forever.
And cause
And
a problem down the road for all of us, like we're
right,
seeing
right,
with
as
the
it breaks down.
PFAS.
And then we also look at terrestrial life. That's the sort of flora and fauna. And then we also look at, lastly, aquatic life. So if something gets through all of those things that made safe, then it's permissible for use in a certified product. So it's pretty intense. It is
Yeah,
hard.
how long does that process take?
Well, it can take anywhere from 8 to 16 weeks on average, I would say, but it's really dependent on getting all the information where we have, flavor houses or fragrance houses involved where there's a lot of trade secret commonly used. Sometimes it can take longer to go after just digging through those ingredients and getting the information we need. But the remarkable thing is that we do get it, and that then products that are working with us and the companies working, I should say, the companies working with us with Made Safe certified products, they learn and they implement and they ask and are tougher on their suppliers, ask for more, ask for better, ask for pure. And that's a benefit to everyone. And that's kind of the theory behind Made Safe. Like, we're
Mhm.
not trying to get all the products in the world certified Made Safe. We're trying to create change to show what is possible to be done out there to push for greener chemistries forward and to inspire more of this kind of work. So when you look at Made Safe, it is a great starting point for whatever you need next, and to use it as a mechanism to purchase something that's in line with your values and the values you want to see cultivated in the world, in the marketplace.
And so how many Made Safe certified products are there?
Yeah, so there are about 3,500, and that won't do everything you ever need or what you're going to buy. And again, that
Mhm.
isn't necessarily the goal, but it's to inspire more companies to do more work like this, to show what's possible, and so that we can affect change that way and
I
get into
love
the
that.
market. Yeah.
Do you ever Are companies ever turned down because they can't meet your screenings or
Yes,
standards? Oh,
exactly. And
really?
that is like, those are the hardest conversations. I wish they didn't happen. We actually try and avoid that by saying, before you work with us, come find out if you're a good fit. We'll do a
Mm.
preliminary, what we call an initial look, where we'll just look at what a company is doing with their specific products, and we'll say, this one looks like it's ready. Why don't you go forward? This doesn't, and here's why. This is now your roadmap to improvement. Switch out these 3 ingredients, work on that over time, and get better, and then come to us.
So
And
it's
then,
a real consulting service for these brands. That's
yeah,
amazing. And I also want to highlight that you're approving products, individual products. So there's brands that might have some with the certification and some that do not. Is that
yep,
correct?
absolutely. And that is an important distinction, and one that we say, look, for certain kinds of performance, some some products just don't have a made safe certifiable option. We have made a very hard decision to not lower our standard in order to work with more brands, and that's really a big differentiator. We do not compromise. The seal is set, the science is established, the paradigm, and everybody has to go through it, and it can be really inconvenient. And that does happen, that we will be working with the brand and we see something we didn't expect wasn't on the
Right.
label. So it took longer to see that, and that can happen. But most of the time, the companies that are working with us, when we find something like that, they say, holy moly, who knew this was here? We want to get it out. And they'll work behind the scenes to make improvements and to get made safe. So in those
That's
instances,
great that they're
it
all
may
over
take
it.
a little longer.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's been incredible to see the dedication of companies who really do want to be differentiated and want to move the needle and want to make a better product for a, safer and more sustainable future in the community.
Yeah, and I really love to spotlight companies that are doing that. And two things I want to ask you. One, I probably should have said this in the beginning, but what types of products get made safe certified? Like what industries are we talking about? Just so
Yeah.
people can understand.
Right. And that is another thing that separates us from many other certification programs is we go across categories. So we've talked a lot about the personal care items, but actually we look at mattresses and bedding and textiles, and we do things that are both sort of a durable good as well as something that's going, on your skin. Or you mentioned household cleaners, and we do all kinds of household cleaners and other household products. Our goal is really to do the everyday things that you're using in your life and to help you make choices that are better for your house, your home, your own human individual person, and then will, kind of ripple through the pond with their impact of improving, your improved air for your own house, your home, the people who live with you, is better air for your town and your community and those around you. And so there are incredible ways that this work expands and expands and expands.
Yeah, amazing. And back to getting certified, you were saying that, the brands really are dedicated to improving. Are there like common difficulties when brands run into issues? Like, are there certain things that just keep coming back up? Like, would you be able to point to any, or is it different depending on the product and the
It's
brand?
different depending on the product. I think that, some of the things that are hard are almost a little bit bigger than the certification, but it is hard to be a brand demanding better because this is not the norm. And though probably your followers think but it should be the norm, and certainly ours do too, right? It isn't. And so it is both more expensive for a brand to use better ingredients. It is harder, and it means they're prioritizing almost a purity that costs more and they are charged for it. Then those brands carry this term, not necessarily made safe, but they're telling people about what they're doing, and that can put a bullseye on their back. So that other brands say, well, are you doing that well enough? Are you living up to that? Are you, you're making a claim. So what is so crazy in the current system of products is you can put harmful ingredients in your products, making zero claims, and that's just fine. Giving
Mhm.
us all these chemicals that impact our, our children's brains, that lower their or reduce their IQ, things that are associated with fertility issues later in life, with cancers, which are rampant. Those ingredients allowed in products, no labels needed. Yet, when you make a claim of good ones, you have to fight that fight every single day. And that is so messed up in our system. And that's something that I really want to see changed.
What particular labels are you talking about?
Any claim of being clean or better or
I
differentiated,
see.
it's
It just
very
draws the
wide.
questions
But
in.
making that claim means now someone can take you down. And so that's just really a backwards system where we're not rewarding companies for doing better. We're actually making them have more risk. And
I had this conversation, a similar conversation with some smaller brands with the new MOCRA legislation. We were excited that it was some new legislation, and after so many years of not having many regulations in the cosmetics industry, and do you really think that that moved the needle? Like, what's your opinion on that?
Any movement is better than none. I mean, we have such outdated legislation on the FDA and EPA side, and so it was, way long overdue. But you're also seeing legislation happening in states individually. So New York State is about to vote on a beauty justice bill. Washington State passed one last year, a specific, like, sort of personal care toxins act. California has one. So, we're seeing these pop up, and they're each different. They have some overlap, but we need the states to push so that we then will inch forward, show what's possible, and get better national legislation. So I'm
Right.
never one to knock legislation
Yeah.
on face value. At the same time, I compare those lists to our band list of where we started, 6,500 at Made Safe, and I'm like, oof, we got a long way to go. So we got to get more aggressive with our legislation. We have to put companies on, on notice. We are not, as consumers, gonna buy products containing harmful chemicals and chemistries, whether it's for us or the environment. We don't want it. We want them to do better. If they get that message, and we send that message by buying better products and voting with our dollars, that matters. That message gets sent to Main Street and Wall Street, and these companies listen to those measurements. And so if we're sending that message, then we can make progress on this.
I think
And
that's so true, because even just seeing the clean movement explode over the last, I mean, because when I started 10 years ago, it wasn't a thing at all. So that it does make a difference what we're buying. I think that moves the needle the most. We
yeah,
can't
and I
count
would
on
say the clean
legislation.
movement is so interesting because it's obviously important to me that we have a clean movement, but how it gets defined is so vastly different. And so that's the one place where I encourage people, like, just take a look and dive in a little bit. If some company is making a clean claim, of like, what does that mean to them? And is that what you were thinking in terms of, better? Because there's a broad range, a very, very broad range of what that could mean. Clean at Sephora,
Right.
really different than clean at Made.
Such a good example as clean at Sephora. They even had the lawsuit, which I think is gone
They
away now. But
and
it
actually
highlights
Sephora won.
Sephora one. It highlights the point that you're making, that clean is like a completely subjective term. There's no legal definition, and you right, like you said, each individual person has a different thought of what that actually means. And
Yeah.
terms vegan and cruelty free, you think that means non-toxic or low tox.
Oh, and and those are really, really interesting, because I spend a lot of time talking to people about, the difference between something that's recycled and something that's non-toxic are very different, so it kind of depends on your lens of what's important, but I always kind of lead with the human, because I find when you're talking with moms, the thing that's driving them forward most is, how do I protect my kids? And I do this and started this. It always goes back to that. It is about protecting and preserving my kids' potential. It is about having a world that's better tomorrow than it is today. It's about helping us know how to get from where we are to where we need to be. And so, that matters enormously to me. And that's how I'm defining clean. So you've got to be really worthy of earning it. And at Made Safe, we have a whole paradigm, the ecosystem approach to scientifically measure and go through whether or not something is worthy of our label.
Right. And so it's human toxicity, toxic to babies, and fertility is at the forefront. And then beyond that, it goes into the ecosystem. Can you kind of walk us through the steps? Is that possible that you go
Yeah.
through?
Yeah, and we have these written out on our website so people can get
Okay.
like a little visual, which I think is really helpful at madesafe.org. But what happens is a company agrees to work with us, they sign their NDA, and they submit their ingredients and materials. We review those, and then we start asking for more. They have to collect a massive dossier on every single product and all of the things that go in it so that we can look at what was done to the ingredients, how they came to be, the processes, and look for substances or materials that might not meet our standard. And what we're doing with that is putting all of those things that are not found on the 6,500 prohibited banned list, anything that's not there, then we look, do we know these ingredients? Have we seen them before? Are they in our database? In which case we know we have a rating on them and we can use that and move on. And if we haven't seen them before and they haven't been put through the ecosystem approach, then they have to get put through that approach, which looks at, again, human health, air, water, soil, sediment, aquatic, and terrestrial toxicity. So
Wow.
then
Okay.
that gets listed and stored in our database. Now we're smarter, we know more. Hopefully that scale helps make this process faster over time, but we're still seeing new things. I mean, there's no system in the US that's capturing new ingredients. So there are all these
Mm,
estimates, like the number of
yeah.
people work off of is there 84,000 chemicals in use today, but the EPA has said over 700 get added to the marketplace each year.
Which
Most
is wild. They're not getting tested. They're just
right.
getting out there. And the only way we know about them is if we see them on the label or if someone like
Yeah, and
Made Safe
worse,
finds it. Yeah.
they get they don't get tested in a uniform way by an independent third party. They are tested by the companies that want to use them. So
Mm,
how did we get stuck with perfluorinated chemistries, the forever chemistries that are so pervasive and will stick around for a glacial age? We cannot get rid of them. We got stuck with them because these companies said that they were fine, that they weren't
yeah.
harmful, and they lied. And they lied to us knowingly, as lawsuits have proven. And yet we are still all paying the price. Perfluorinated chemistries are in half the tap water in the US. The contamination is massively widespread. You could think that was depressing. It is, but it is also a starting point of measurement that we now can improve from. I personally would like to see the companies that have been, you know, proliferating these chemistries pay for a lot of that cleanup. But the truth is, at this point, that's not the system that we have. So then
Yeah.
you need lawsuits to bring that about. And, it would be so much better for everyone, even the companies involved, if we put a mechanism of restraint on new chemistries before they make it out into the marketplace. That just seems like common sense, but it is far from how things go. And that's why Made Safe at least enacts and, does this very stringent and rigorous process so we can, again, send a message to the marketplace. These chemistries we don't want. It's possible to make things without it. We can do it.
Right. We
And
can
we
do
can talk
better.
about it.
Yeah. One thing I wanted to that kind of came up in my mind when you were talking is all of these new ingredients. Something that I get asked about a lot, and I
Mm.
think this is a gray area, is synthetic fragrance ingredients. So many of these seem like they're new. Have they been rigorously tested? Like, what is your take on those?
So fragrance is so interesting and is just a fascinating area of the kind of chemicals in the marketplace. And fragrance chemistries, whether synthetic or natural, are often filled with volatile organic compounds or what are called VOCs, and those can be harmful and hard on us humans as well as other things in our environment. Um, and at MadeSafe, we try and be agnostic over whether something is natural or synthetic. That said, I will admit that natural things in the world tend to perform better in an ecosystem approach because the body knows what to do with it and how to get rid of it, how to excrete it, as does the environment. So, what we look for are synthetics that will not do harm to us or to the environment with the science that exists today. So to the best of our abilities,
Got
that's
it.
there. And so I look at it slightly differently than maybe, others in saying that, but I think that's the measure. I don't want to just sink a chemical because it's synthetic or man-made. However, I will say some of the worst problems that we're facing are, PCBs, persistent organic pollutant, pesticides, perfluorinated chemistries, the synthetic flame retardants. A lot of these are in common. They share that they are man-made synthetics, like plastics is another one. And we don't, our bodies and our environment are not made to metabolize these things, and they have become so omnipresent that we're all carrying them in our bodies. We're breathing them in every breath, and that needs to change.
Yeah. You said plastics. I believe Made Safe has some stipulations around packaging. Do you want to share a little bit about that?
So we don't certify the packaging. So it's really important
Okay.
to say that.
Okay.
However, we are passionate about all things related to products. Plastics is really hard when it comes to packaging because in a global supply chain, a lot of companies pick plastics because they are cheapest and most manageable. What we think is really exciting is the companies who are moving the needle on finding other ways and delivering products that would have required plastic in a new and novel way to either reduce or eliminate it. And I'll give you a few examples. Like actually,
Great. Okay.
Captain Blankenship did an amazing job as they were looking at their products, thinking about their packaging, and they went with, instead of plastics, they went to like cans and canisters and different kind of serving up their products just to switch away from plastics. That's one thing that you could do. We work with a company called Meliora, and they make cleaning products. They also do some bar soaps. They use no plastic in their containers. So they actually have like these cylinders for holding their laundry detergent, which is a powder. So they've eliminated water, which eliminates the need for, the plastic container. And they even go so far as to give you a scooper, which is metal and, infinitely reusable with your first order. And then if you order a refill, it's again in a paper kind of baggie as opposed to, or pouch, as opposed to, plastic. So
That's neat. Yeah.
then we work with a company called Clary Collection, and they make like a balm that I love, that is used for so many things, and it comes in a tin, so I don't need a lotion. Or Kate McLeod is another one doing something that I really love as an inventive solution to, lotion, two things that get under my skin, so to speak, lotion and body wash. And this notion
Ah,
that we need
me
these
too.
things because they all come in plastic
Yeah.
packaging.
Yeah.
You realize how much plastic you're just sending to landfill every year, even if you recycle it, plastic degrades with every recycling effort. And so it's denuded as it goes through the system, and it's not perfectly recycled, which makes it hard. Plus, the recycling process is dirty. And so we end up with contaminants and problems with like bisphenols and phthalates that get introduced into recycled plastics that weren't there in the virgin plastics. So we got to
Yeah.
get
And I think that's a really interesting approach. I agree because I just think that when plastic isn't necessary, we shouldn't be using it.
right.
I mean, why would you use a body wash when, in my opinion, a bar soap is just as good, if not better?
A
No
beautiful
plastic.
bar soap. So like Meliora has this bar soap that's so rich and creamy and lathery that, it's amazing. Yes, you have to think about, where am I going to put this in my shower or along my tub, wherever you bathe, so that the soap bar doesn't, get moist and wet. But that's a function of a good like receptacle to hold it. That shouldn't be a
Yeah.
holdback
So,
mechanism. It's
yeah.
so much cheaper by volume. It lasts so much longer, and you can even use like a bar soap for your hair if you wash and want to do that as an option. And then also like Kate McLeod, I do a girls' weekend annually, and I brought my lotion bar. She calls them body stones with me because we travel to meet up once a year with my girlfriends who are
So
now
nice.
across
That's
the country,
wonderful.
right? And
Yeah.
and so they were like, "What is that thing?" And I was like, "Oh my gosh, I love this. It's my Kate Cloud body stone, and I use it on my skin. And when I travel, I don't get stuck at security for having a container of liquid that's too large, and then you have to, pitch it, which is so frustrating." So I love
Right.
stuff like that. Like she's got a lotion bar that is
That's so neat.
instead of, a moisturizer, or an
Very
oil,
neat.
which I love oils,
Me
but
too.
you can't travel with them as well. So anyway, and the lotion bar sort of behaves a little differently, doesn't leave my skin feeling greasy, so I can use it, and it's really nurturing, and nourishing,
Nice.
I should
I've
say.
got to try that. I wanted to know a little bit more about like the founding of Made Safe. I know it's a woman-run company. Like,
Yeah.
how did you decide to make it? Did you start with a partner? Can you talk a little bit about the organization?
Sure. So when I started, again, I started before Made Safe came to be. I was thinking that I would do a classic internet, play as an entrepreneur. I just saw this opportunity in the marketplace to help people find products that wouldn't harm their kids and their families, just like I was interested in. And so I started it as more of a typical internet play. I was living in Silicon Valley at the time.
Mhm.
And as I shopped around the idea, I had a business partner who's still on our board today, but she and I had worked together as internet entrepreneurs for a long time, for 10 years, and we were shopping this idea around, and it became really clear that people wanted us to be like what they called the Amazon of green. And the only way to do that, to become what's known as a unicorn, $1 billion company, or company valued at $1 billion anyway, with 100 million in revenue, was going to require us sacrificing the mission at some point for the profits. And, there are lots of companies that's their mandate, but this should not be one of them, because that's how you pervert your, that line, that system, the ecosystem approach. You bend it because you can't make as much money doing something else. And so I didn't want to have to make those choices. And that's when we decided, you know what, this will be better suited as a nonprofit,
Mhm.
as a for profit. And so we shifted gears, and then we spent a year really looking at the marketplace, what was done, what was necessary, how to do it, how to have impact. And from there, Made Safe really took shape. And here we are.
It's amazing. How is Made Safe different from the other certifications that products can get?
Oh, that's such a great question. I love this one. Well, first of all, Made Safe is different because we are a philosophy of change in practice. We don't lower or compromise our standard for anyone or anything. And in so doing, we are really about the best of the very best. We are about, again, proving what is possible. This is the future of product making and manufacturing, and moving that needle. Most SEALs want to, well, every SEAL, including us, wants to survive, but many of them have a lower threshold or a lower barrier to entry, so that they can certify more, so that they can be, more profitable. Even if you look at like the US government seals, like the Energy Star or something like that, they have all these grades, all these shades. Safer choice for them is
Mm, sorry.
that anyone can play in. It's graded, and consumers don't really understand this, with a complex series of ingredients, shapes, shades, and sizes that show how good or bad ingredients are, but they're all pretty much permitted. It's just how much are you using them, where are you using them, all these different things, and yet they all end up with the same safer choice marking. I don't think that
Mm.
that's as efficient. And so Made Safe really was designed to be different, to be holding this line and pushing it forward. And if we ever get to a place where we're certifying half the marketplace, if we haven't already, to change and push more and push harder and push farther.
Amazing. What year did was Made Safe come about?
So we launched in 2016 into the marketplace with certified product. We had 24 products. Today we have over 3,000, closer to 3,500. And we started with 12 brands, and now we've worked with, over time. Not every brand comes to us for certification. Some just come to do better and to learn. Over 100 brands, and so we're growing, and excited to, and honored to be in doing this work with such incredible visionary brands.
Awesome. Awesome. are the biggest challenges in what you're doing?
I think the biggest challenge is that, it costs money to do what we do, and its seals aren't the kinds of thing that generally get foundation funding. So we rely on money from businesses and from donors. So that's why every dollar counts, and we would, be honored for people to make a donation to Made Safe.
Okay, and where should people find MaidSafe products, or where can they make that donation? Should they go to maidsafe.org or
Yeah, go to madesafe.org. You can find products under categories and see the kinds of things that we have. Maybe you're looking for, a pet bed, or maybe you're looking for a face oil or a baby balm. You can find them all. And for making donations, same thing, madesafe.org. And you can just go to donate, or donate page.
amazing. Is there any takeaways you'd want to give people that are just getting their feet wet with this and want to start using safe products?
Yes, I'm very passionate about this. It can be overwhelming. I've been there. I was you, no matter where you are starting from. And it is possible to do this. You don't have to do everything, and you don't have to do it all at once. This is about peeling the onion. You will tackle it in layers. So don't let the overwhelm get to you. Just again, start with what you need next and try and buy something that aligns with your values. And if Made Safe can be a help in doing that, then that makes me incredibly happy. But that's all. So a little curiosity will go a long, long way in buying better.
I love that so much. That's a great sentiment to leave with everybody. This has been amazing, Amy. Thank you so much. I
Thanks for
appreciate
having me.
what you were doing, appreciate Made Safe.
Thank you. Thanks again for having me.